A friend of ours set me up with my wife, who is 40 years old. The person in question was her best friend, and I knew her because I was friendly with both her and her brother. Even though we knew a lot of the same people, we had never met or even heard of each other. I hadn't been on many dates lately, so I agreed to go on the blind date. Why not, right? It would be great if it worked out. It's okay if it didn't work out, though. The woman I was supposed to go out with would also move on with her life. We agreed to go on a second date, then a third, then a fourth, and so on. Things went pretty well on the first date. We thought about getting married as early as 6 months into our relationship, so it may have been a bit of a rush. It sounds crazy, but we got along great. There were many things we had in common, and I never felt pushed when I talked to her. We've always been good at it. So, when I told her I was going to propose after about 8 months, no one seemed surprised. At first, my family wasn't sure what to do and asked me if this wasn't too fast. Not only that, but they were at least there for me. The same thing happened to my wife's family. My family was kind enough to give us a house after we got married. It was in the family for a long time, so we weren't rich or anything. The family home went to the child who got married first. Even though it sounds mean, none of my brothers were against this plan. The two of us moved into the house and began to build a life together, as all newlyweds do. After getting married for about a year, my wife found out she was pregnant, and we soon had a little girl. Having a baby can be very stressful for a couple. Our daughter did, but we were able to make it work, just like when we went from a quick romance to marriage. It became more fun for us to go on double dates with her best friend after she got married. It was great because my wife and I didn't have many married friends to hang out with. When I think back, I see that most of our friends were single. I guess that's what happens when you get married young. A lot of people wait until they are in their 30s to get married. My wife's best friend and her husband were always nice to me. They seemed like a good fit, just like we did. The two of them wanted to start a family but weren't going to do it yet because they were too busy with their jobs. Things looked good for the first few years of marriage. I think I didn't even notice that something wasn't right because my wife was so good at hiding the truth. Now that I think about it, I see that this is true. The best friend of my wife was the one who told me about it. She told me one day that she had noticed her husband was keeping things from her lately. She found out that he was talking to her best friend and my wife when she spied on him. Most of the time, it was hard to tell what they were saying, but she did hear her husband say some rude things, and then she heard my wife laugh on the other line. At first, I didn't want to deal with it, so I tried to think of a lot of reasons she might have heard what she heard. It was just that I couldn't think of a reasonable way to explain what my wife's best friend told me. When I did some spying on my own, I found the same thing that my wife's best friend did. Because it was easier, we chose to talk to our partners one-on-one. First, I asked my wife if she had something to say. When she seemed confused, I asked her if she was having an affair and then told her I knew another person she was seeing. She first tried to say that her best friend was angry about what we had and wanted to end her marriage. I told her that I thought her husband was also cheating on her with someone else. We both had theories and, if you will, enough weapons of the moment to build a case. At some point, my wife finally told me the truth. For the past year, she had been seeing her best friend's husband instead of her husband. Once they told me, I was shocked because I couldn't believe I hadn't known about it for a year. For a week, I didn't talk to my wife. It was impossible for me to forgive her, but I was shocked. I told her we were over after the shock wore off. Even though she looked sad, I didn't think it was real. When I talked to my wife's best friend, she told me that she was also getting a divorce. Her husband almost looked happy. We each got a divorce from a cheating husband and let them be with you. In the end, I got to keep the house and main custody of our daughter after the divorce. My ex-wife moved in with her best friend's ex-husband in the house they used to share. It didn't matter to her best friend because she didn't want to be around him and needed a break. We kept in touch with each other even after she moved out of town. We were definitely becoming good friends. The fact that my ex-wife and her didn't talk to each other again was good. She was only in my life because of our daughter. I didn't want her to be there any longer than she had to be. You might think things were great since my ex got married to her affair partner and had a house right away. That wasn't true at all. After 3 years, she had 2 more children with the cheating partner. It worked out well for the best friend not having kids with him because the cheating partner didn't do anything to help with the kids. He was cheating on her, which made things even worse for her. He didn't have to deal with that chaos very often because my daughter only went over there every other weekend. I only talked to her about our daughter. She did try to get me to help her with her 2 kids because she saw how good of a dad I was to our daughter. I didn't care about these kids. They were hers and her new boyfriend's kids. I told her it was her problem, and she needed to take care of it. I told her that my ex was desperate, but she made her bed and it was time to lie in it. Her ex-best friend thought this was funny. As a first point, I must say that your ex-wife is very bold to ask you to help her with her 2 younger children. Their names are the younger brothers of your daughter, but you don't care about them. It's not meant to be mean, it's just the truth. She thought they would never be apart again. Little did she know that she could have had a happy ending with you. Do the best job you can as a parent and always be there for your kid. Believe me, she will love it more than you can imagine. If you cheat on your ex-wife, she will have to deal with having 2 kids with someone who won't help her. It was lucky that her ex-best friend didn't have kids with the guy. There's no doubt that she would have ended up in the same position as your ex if she had. Without a doubt, that's not a good position. Let's move on to the next story for today. The first few months, my wife, who is also 50 years old, and I thought we had a pretty good relationship. We met for the first time in college when we were both in our early 20s. After becoming friends, we slowly began going out on dates after about 2 years of being friends. It's always a good idea to be friends with someone first. That way, you already know something about them. When you're dating someone, though, things look very different. That didn't happen with my wife and me, though. It was easy for us to go from being friends to dating. It was so easy to make the change that it was almost scary. It's clear that marriage came next. After going out together for a while, we chose to get married. We both agreed that a medium-sized wedding would be best. Both sets of parents were willing to help pay for the wedding, which was great. Through the years, we've bought a house and had children. After our first child, we had a second boy 3 years later. Our last child came along 4 years after the second son. There was a girl in the last child. Hey, my wife was a good mom when the kids were little, but she seemed to lose interest when they were older and already becoming their own people. It seemed like she was nicer to them when they were babies and toddlers, when they needed her more. At least, this is how I felt. They still saw her as their mother, but when they were old enough, they always came to me. Dad would take care of them if they needed something. The way things were in our house ended up this way, even though I wasn't happy with it. By the time we were in our late 40s, we were no longer married. The youngest kid was beginning middle school, and the oldest was already in college. We were also getting close to another important milestone. Our middle child would be going to college soon. When was the last time my wife and I were personal with each other? I couldn't even remember when we had a date night. Still, I promised to stay with you no matter what when we got married. I asked my wife one day if we should think about going to therapy, but she said we didn't need it. By the time we were 50, I was sick of everything. I wasn't happy, but I still wanted to try to connect with my wife in a real way. We had been through a lot together and had 3 kids, so that seemed like something worth fighting for. But my wife thought otherwise. She would say no every time I tried to talk to her. Then I had to take some time to think about how she was acting. I tried to figure out what was wrong with her, but failed miserably. Our third son was the one who figured out what was wrong with my wife. His mother, my wife, was out running an errand one day when he saw her kissing another man in the street. He pulled me away and told me this. It wasn't a small town, but it was a city where we lived. There was still a chance that someone, like our real children, would see them. My wife didn't seem to care about that much. She did it again, so I told her I was sorry and even took a video of it to show her. When she said she wasn't telling the truth, she stopped talking She told me that she no longer loved me a long time ago when I asked her if she did. It would be too mild to say I was heartbroken. I loved her. I still loved her a lot after everything we had been through. But since she broke our promise, I didn't see any reason to keep them. Until someone left the marriage, it was for better or worse. I'm sorry, but that could not be changed at all. When it came to the kids, I wanted to tell them all at once that things were ending between us. My wife and I told them on a group call. The other two kids weren't shocked because our middle son had already told them that he had seen their mother cheating on them. People picked sides, and mine was picked. My wife said I was trying to make the kids dislike her, but I told her she did that on her own. She chose to cheat and hurt her family, so she was the only one to blame. It was a bad marriage split. We agreed to sell the house and split the money between us. To be honest, I no longer wanted it. The house held too many memories for me, most of which I didn't want to remember. After we got divorced and sold the house, I used my share of the money to buy a condo close to my oldest son, who was getting married and starting a family of his own. It wasn't yet pregnancy, but they were trying, and I was so happy for them. That's all my kids said to my ex-wife. You can tell she was mad because she had been pulling away from them for a long time. I don't know what else she thought they would do. When you add in the fact that she cheated on me, it was clear that our kids would not want to be with my ex for a long time. As I thought she would, she moved on with the affair partner, AP. While they were kids, they may have lived next door to each other. Thanks to Facebook, they were able to get back in touch before having an affair a little more than a year before our divorce became legal. No one was shocked when the AP cheated on my wife. In return, my wife got drunk, got in her car, and tried to drive to his house, but she was caught along the way. Because of this, she was charged with DUI. I couldn't believe she did that because she never did that when we were together. I really didn't feel sorry for my ex because she had chosen to hurt herself. She had done all of this to herself after all. Her parents bailed her out in the end, but she tried to ask our kids and even me for help. We all said no. The last thing I did was call my ex-in-laws, but they were very critical and would hold it against my ex-wife. It was her first time doing it, so she only got a slap on the wrist. But the fact that it happened at all was embarrassing for her. I was done with my ex-wife, so I didn't feel sorry for her. It was going to stay that way because my ex-spouse picked her AP over her kids. When she and our son's boyfriend finally got pregnant and had a baby, she tried to go to the hospital. The fact that she was there shocked me. I don't know how she knew. She was pushed away in an instant and yelled at the whole time she was being led out of the hospital. Thank goodness neither our son nor his girlfriend knew about the meeting, which made me happy. Our son might change his mind if she really apologized for what she did, but until then, she would not be able to see our grandchild. OP, I think it's great that you tried to fix your marriage even though it looked like it would never work. You really meant what you said when you said your vows. I agree with you. Once you get married, it's for life, unless something bad happens, like cheating. I'm glad your kids stood by you when you had to. It's too bad that your son had to see his mother cheat on him with another man and then tell you about it. That's not something a kid should have to tell their parents. The DUI was the right thing to do. Perhaps she was having a midlife crisis at the time, which made her act this way, or it could have been there all along, and something like this brought it to light. Keep doing what you're doing in general. Also, happy birthday to your new baby. I hope the best for you and your family. Things will get better in the end, so give yourself time to heal.